Well, folks, the moment has finally arrived where I can make the declaration that the barn clean-out project is finished. There is no trash in this barn. There's no trash in the hayloft, just a few windows and doors that I'll end up reusing. There's no trash in the stables. Those are all cleaned out. There's no trash in the south wing. And there's no trash in the north wing, just salvaged wood. For 3 months, that barn has just sat there. I couldn't even use it because I couldn't even walk through it. Well, now I can use it. Now I can walk through it. It's fair to say that I have a barn now. It took 2 full dumpster loads. This is the second load right here, and $300 in rental fees to complete this project. To my mind, worth every single penny. There's only been a few junk items from the barn that I haven't been able to get rid of. The first are these spools of cable. I'm not sure exactly what type of cable this is. From the looks of it, it appears to be some sort of professional grade telecommunications line. I looked around on Craigslist to see if any of these things were already up for sale. There are a few, but no one's bought them for months. They've just sat there. I'm not sure how big of an amateur market there is for this type of thing. And I've also thought about maybe putting them to use somewhere on the farm. It is really heavy-duty wire after all. I thought maybe I could use it for some kind of fencing application. But I can't really justify having these 4 giant spools sitting around on my property taking up space for some obscure application that I don't even know of yet. So I need to figure out a way to get rid of them. The second are these various cans and buckets of random fluids. The dumpster guys won't take them, so I need to figure out some sort of way to fill them up with kitty litter and take them to the local dump. But once I've gotten rid of them, otherwise everything has gone into these dumpsters. Now that the barn is cleared out, it's obvious that there are some repairs that need to be made. Thankfully, we do have electricity running to the barn now, thanks to my friend Nate Kramer of The Kramer Life. Check out his channel here. He actually helped me wire the barn up. But other than that, there are some clear issues. A janky support column, blown out roof panels, rotten wood here and there, all issues that I need to take on eventually. But that being said, none of those issues are necessarily all that urgent. And besides, before I take those issues on, I'd like to have some sort of an idea of what I'm going to do with all of this salvage wood. And it's a lot of salvage wood. Now, I could just keep all of this wood here. It would certainly be the easiest thing to do. It'd save me a lot of work. But I'm not a fan of that idea for 2 reasons. The first one being that all of this wood is very cluttered and disorganized right now. If there's a specific piece of lumber that I was looking for, I'd have to dig through all of it in order to get to it. The second is that this wood is taking up very valuable real estate in this north wing of the barn. This is an area that ideally I'd like to start using for animals as soon as the spring. I could also just pile it up here on the floor of the hayloft. That is how I found it, after all. But I'm not a fan of this idea either. Just like downstairs, it would be very cluttered and disorganized, and it would also take up all this valuable floor space. Floor space that I could use for things like, I don't know, hay. With all that being said, I still feel like my best option for storing the wood is the hayloft. It's the only spot I have that can fit all of it while still technically remaining indoors under this roof, keep it out of the elements. And if I want to keep all of this lumber up here, but I don't want to just pile it on the floor, where else can I put it? Well, one place is along the walls. There's actually several of these kind of flimsy wooden brackets that are up here. Now, instead of using more wood to create more brackets, I figured I could use metal, specifically rebar. I've actually got quite a few of these salvage rebar pieces lying around. The idea is to simply drill a hole into these support beams and then put the rebar in, maybe a little bit more than halfway through the support beam. The part that sticks out will serve as the bracket. Now, if I line a few of those up along the wall, I'll have myself kind of an impromptu lumber rack. At least that's the idea, so let's give it a shot. So what exactly am I going to need for this project? Well, not much. Other than the rebar itself, all that I'll need is a measuring tape, a sledgehammer, and a drill with the properly sized paddle bit. Now, since my rebar is a 1/2 inch in diameter, I'm using a paddle bit that's also a 1/2 inch. That way I can put the rebar into the hole that I create. So with that being said, let's get going. Now for my very first spot, I'd like the bracket to be about 18 inches up from the floor. So what I'm going to do is measure out 18 inches, find the spot, and mark it with the tip of my paddle bit. And I also want to make sure that the paddle bit won't go all the way through the beam. So just in case, I'm going to line it up, and I see that it gets fairly close. So instead of pushing all the way to the end of the bit, I'm probably just going to push about that far or so. So with nothing else left to do, let's drill. Okay, so I'd say that the hole that I drilled was probably about that far back, but I'm going to start by putting my rebar piece in, hammer it in as far as I can put it in, and then give it a little test to see how strong it is. Now the hole's a little tight, but that's actually what I want. It seems to be about as far as I can bring it in. I guess that's where I drilled to. But it seems very solid. Solid enough, I think, to hold quite a bit of wood. All right, with one successful bracket in, let's get two more, and then we can test it out with some wood. As with the first beam, I'm going to measure out 18 inches and then mark the spot with my paddle bit. All right, so that was super easy. I've got 3 solid rebar brackets here. I'm going to clean up all of this dust, and then I'm going to get a couple of pieces of wood, put them on, see how it works. I think it's fair to say that this is going to work. Well, it's good to know that I've got a lumber storage solution that will work, and I definitely have my work cut out for me putting up as many of those rebar brackets in the hayloft as possible. But before I put all of this wood up, I'd like to keep most of it down here because our next big project will be constructing raised beds for our gardens. And we're going to be building a lot of raised beds, so I'd like to have as much wood as possible near to hand. But once I'm done building those raised beds, then I can put the rest of this stuff up pretty easily. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. Before I let you go, I wanted to give you a quick update on our 3.5-month-old rooster-in-training, Fighter, who before last week we weren't even sure was a rooster. Well, as I mentioned in the last episode, Fighter's got a really pathetic croak, a cock-a-doodle-don't, if you will. Well, today I was actually able to capture that elusive crow on video. So, as we close out today's episode, I present to you the sound of a teenage rooster.